All right. Hi, everybody. Okay. I hope you still have some energy left before the drinks and food. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to present the graphs L2 journey, what we've done so far. I'm going to show you a preview of the transfer tools that will allow people to move to L2 easily, and talk a little bit about the next steps to get these to mainnet and then what's coming after that. So I'm Pablo. Some of you saw me earlier today. I started in Edge and Node last year as part of the smart contracts team, and almost immediately started working on this. And now more of a protocol product manager role, and like a lot of coordination work for all of the amazing people that are making this happen now. And the challenge that we had and what triggered all of this work that I'm going to show you is we're moving a running protocol to L2 to Arbitrum, and trying to do it without interruptions and in a very safe way. It's in a way like asking a lot of people on an airplane to switch to another airplane in midair. But also we need everyone to decide to do the switch by themselves. So it's quite a tricky thing. We have all of the state that lives in smart contracts on mainnets. Indexers have stake. There's delegators, there's curators, subgraphs are deployed there, and it's not something that you can just copy and move to L2. And in all of these actions, all of these states that you have in smart contracts, they also involve things like thawing periods or taxes, and there is a cost and a time in wanting to take out that state and put it somewhere else. And we wanted to make it very easy to do that and avoid all of these waits and all of these additional costs. So this happened in several stages. It started early last year, maybe even before that. I know I joined early last year. And we thought of doing it in 3 stages so that we could take the care to do it in a way that was safe for everybody and in the right way, hopefully. So all of 2022 was basically preparation for this. And then we rolled out the 3 stages in quick succession since the beginning of this year. And we're now standing on stage 3. I'm going to explain now what this means and what's left. So we started looking at the L2 options in February. There were some conversations before, but around that time, there was consensus among the core dev teams that were that got together to discuss this, that Arbitrum was the best choice with the information we had at the point, the stage of development of the other L2s. So what happened is we prepared a graph improvement proposal, and we let the community discuss in terms of like, is this something that we all want to do? And it seemed like it was something that everyone wanted to do. So we started moving forward, and we prepared the contracts for the 2 subsequent stages. So we built a bridge so that people can move GRT and also some state from L1 to L2. And we did the changes that we needed in a protocol so that we could deploy it to L2. Not a lot. EVM compatibility is useful. And we also did the contracts for stage 2, that is, we wanted to be able to mint indexing rewards on Arbitrum. And these are newly issued GRT, so it's not quite straightforward how you would do that in 2 networks at the same time. So we actually had to iterate a little bit on this. But we got those contracts done, and then late last year, around December, we actually deployed the bridge, and we deployed the L2 protocol. And then beginning of this year, we entered stage 1, where the bridge and the protocol were deployed on L2. We have now mainnet, the graph network, and then Arbitrum 1, the graph network. And then all of the other work started in terms of surfacing this in the products, in Explorer and Studio, and the things that people used to interact with this network, or now these networks. So once that happened, and we went through all of the testing that was needed for the contracts to mint the rewards in L2, and this was, re-architecting all of the indexing rewards distribution and changing it. And I mentioned there was some iteration. We developed 2 different approaches for this and ended up doing a linear formula. So indexing rewards used to follow a compound interest formula, and now it's linear. So this allowed us to do the minting on both sides and being able to keep the count of how many tokens could be minted in L2. And then we upgraded the bridge so that we could support these L2 native tokens, so to speak, during the bridging. If you're familiar with how bridging tokens across layer 1 and layer 2 works, usually you put some tokens in escrow in L1, and that mints new tokens in L2. But then if you're going back and there are tokens that aren't in that escrow, well, you need to mint them. So we had to do a change in the bridge to support that, and we had to do it in a way that was careful, because we put a cap on how many tokens can be minted so that it's exactly the maximum amount that you could have minted on L2. And once we were done with this, and we already had the protocol deployed, we already had the products, Explorer and Studio supporting this, and that's when we went through the council. I mean, we went through for the initial deployment too, but through the council to approve starting that initial 5% of indexing rewards being minted on Arbitrum. And this is what brought us to where we are now, that is stage 3. That is, we have 22 indexers that are already doing their operations on Arbitrum as well as mainnets, and 173 subgraphs that have been published there. And all of this is obviously with a very small amount of the indexing rewards, but we want to get that to 100% at some point. So in order to unlock this, we need to make it very easy for the whole network, the whole community to move over to L2. And that's where the transfer tools come in, and that's what I'm going to show you next. So, as I said, main point, we want to move this state. We want to move the GRT to L2 without delays, without downtime, and without additional costs beyond, obviously, the gas cost. That is unavoidable. So we did this for 4 kinds of transfers: subgraphs, curation, indexer, stake, and delegation. And these are the 4 kinds of state that you need to be able to move to L2 so that everyone can be on the other side. For subgraphs, this has several steps, but the main idea is we're sending the subgraph, all of the information about that subgraph, together with the subgraph owner's curation, with one message that goes from L1 to L2. So the subgraph owner performs a single transaction. This sends the message through the bridge, and the subgraph appears on the other side. And then, okay, during that time, there's some time when that subgraph is in flight. What happens with the subgraph during that time? The subgraph in L1 is going to be deprecated because it's no longer in L1. Now it's an L2 subgraph. And we have to support subgraph consumers that are still going to be wanting to query that subgraph during that time. So what we did, or we're doing, is adding indexer tooling so that indexers can easily support indexing on both networks with a single stack, and give them tooling so that they can keep supporting the subgraph that is being migrated, and then very quickly start indexing on the other side, because they actually already have it in their database. So if they're using the same stack, then there's no need to re-index the subgraph again. And another improvement is on the gateway. You're going to query the L1 gateway trying to get that subgraph, but there's now something in that gateway that will forward the queries to the L2 gateway and the L2 indexers if there are no indexers left on L1. So all of this is a lot of moving pieces so that when subgraph developers and subgraph owners want to move their subgraphs to L2, they can do it in the most seamless way. So actually, let me show you how this actually works. And I hope this is not too small. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit. All right. So sneak preview, this is staging environment, testnet, but pretty close to what I hope we're going to deploy very, very soon. I have this subgraph, aptly named, not very useful, but I want to send it to L2. And I just have a button here in Studio that says I want to transfer it to Arbitrum Girly in this case because it's a testnet subgraph. And this is the actual transfer tool. It's granted a lot of steps, but what we wanted to focus on was making this experience very safe. It's very tricky to send interlayer messages, and we want to make sure that everyone knows exactly what to do and can take the steps carefully to get the subgraph on the other side. So the first step is going to be sending that L1 to L2 message. And I have to be the owner, obviously, for this. And I might actually be using a multisig as the account that owns my subgraph. And therefore, that multisig probably doesn't exist in Arbitrum. So I might want to put a different owner for the subgraph on L2. And you'll see this pattern in all of the transfer tools. We're accounting for that possibility and making it very easy to set up, okay, this is going to be the L2 wallet that I'm going to use. And if you're using a multisig, you have to choose a different address. We don't want to risk people losing their stuff because they're sending it to a non-existent address. So, okay, I understand the steps. I would say, like, if you're doing this process, make sure you already have some ETH bridged to Arbitrum. If not, you're going to be prompted to do so at some point, but it's easier if you already have it there. And then the actual transfer is as simple as signing this transaction. You'll see you need to send a little bit of ETH here. If you're, again, familiar with the Arbitrum bridge, we're paying for the L2 gas from L1 and sending the message with the subgraph. And as you can see, I'm sending the 99 GRT that I had signaled on the subgraph, and it's going to go through. Okay, I guess the demo gods are not with me today. Thanks. Okay. If you do a leap of faith and believe me that what you would see here is a timer saying, okay, now you have 20 minutes, go get a coffee or something. I'm not going to ask you to wait for me for 20 minutes, and actually this little cross tells me there's something we need to fix. Luckily, this is not on mainnet and production yet. But 20 minutes later, you would see this. Your subgraph made it all the way to L2. It's a retryable ticket. It might happen that that L2 gas that we paid for wasn't enough in L1. And then you might need to then go ahead and retry the transaction on L2. And this step is here so that we ensure you're ready to do that if it's needed, because it's very important. So I'm now gonna switch my wallet to Arbitrum, connect with my L1 wallet, my L2 wallet, sorry. And I have, this incomplete transfer. So now I'm at this step. The subgraph is almost there, but not quite. I will confirm it and finally publish it. Until I do this, the subgraph is in a sort of limbo. Luckily, the L1 indexer should still be serving that subgraph. And now with this final transaction, I'm going to take that subgraph, publish it to L2, and we have an L2 subgraph. I don't know if it's my network or, okay. Which one do I confirm? And then hopefully, in this case, the subgraph transferred successfully. Thank you. Cool, so from this point onwards, if you go to the Explorer, actually in Studio, you look at my the subgraphs, and this subgraph is actually now on Girly and Arbitrum Girly. The one on Gurley is deprecated, but this one is also here. And because this is a useless subgraph, it's not syncing, so don't look at that. But yeah, subgraph transfer tool 2, we're good to go. And oh, okay. There we go. So we're back to the transfer tools and moving on to the other participants. Stake transfers, this is very important for indexers. They want to set up their L1 and L2 operations. And this is, as I mentioned, we're providing new tooling so that they can do it with a single stack. No need to have separate databases and two completely different sets of infrastructure. And because this might be a case, because you might be running in L1 and L2 for a while, and while indexing rewards are going to be transferring from one network to the other, it makes sense to do so, then transfers of stake allow you to send partial amounts of stake. Obviously, you need to send over the minimum stake amount, and there are a few other restrictions, like if you have open allocations on L1, that means you're still indexing a lot of subgraphs on L1, and you have stake locked into that those subgraphs in a way. You have to free that up before you can send it over. So in most cases, if you want to fully transfer, you'll just close all of your L1 allocations and then do the transfer. If you want to send just a little bit, you'll close a little bit so that you still have enough to cover your needed stake in L1 and then send the rest over. And for this, I have another demo. I'm going to need to connect with the right wallet here. Okay, so this is my indexer account. Again, on a development testnet environment for now, coming to mainnet soon. And I'm looking at my profile on Explorer, and I can see that, okay, some rewards are already happening on Arbitrum, and I might want to transfer stake. So I'm going to open the transfer tool. And at this point, I think I do have a connectivity problem. No, okay. And I should be on Ethereum Gurley and not on Arbitrum Gurley because I just switched. I know I would recommend the graph, but. Okay, so now stake transfer tool, a few less steps. Subgraphs are, I would say, the one that need more steps because they need this second transaction to publish in L2. But for all of the other participants, it's actually going to look a lot like this. So for delegators and for curators, it's also going to be this 3-step thing where you just need to send a transaction from L1 to L2. And I won't say you can forget about it because you send the transaction from L1 to L2, and then as in every Arbitrum Bridge transaction, you might have to retry it on the L2 side in case there was an L2 gas spike. So in this case, yeah, I have my wallet. I can set a receiving Arbitrum address, and I put the amount of stake that I want to transfer. I'll just send all of it, sign the transaction. We initiate the stake transfer. You can look at the transaction on Etherscan as usual. And then in this case, you should just, again, see the timer. And okay, stake transfer initiated, we have the timer. And it's about 20 minutes for this to go, at some point, the Arbitrum sequencer picks up this transaction, posts it to L2, and then we go to step 3, which in this case, and for the other transfer tools, in most cases, it'll just be automatic. You don't need to run it manually. If you do need to run it because there was a gas spike, you just switch to your Arbitrum wallets and just execute the transaction. And that's where having some ETH bridge on Arbitrum might come handy. And if not, you can get it at that point and do it. You have 7 days to do that. And a very important thing I will say is if you run into any issues throughout this process, we're going to have several support channels, an email address on Discord. You can find us, we'll help you. We won't let you with your stake or your subgraphs in limbo between the 2 layers. So yeah, don't worry about that. So that's the transfer tools. That's the ones that I'm going to demo now. For the other 2, delegation and curation, it's actually very similar. You can transfer the delegation after your indexer has sent some stake to L2. So as long as your indexer has more than the minimum stake on L2 or has done this transfer at least once, then as a delegator, you can choose when you want to send your stake there, your delegated stake there. And If you're not happy with this, if for whatever reason you want to stay in L2, in L1, then once your indexer has fully transferred all of their stake to L2, then you can just withdraw in L1 without the thawing period. And in the case of curators, it's also, again, depending on when the subgraph has been transferred to L2, then you can start sending your signal to L2 as well. Now, signal on L2 uses the flat bonding curve. We've mentioned this a few times, and this means there's less risk when you're curating. But for this, your curation signal is converted to GRT when the subgraph is migrated, and then that amount of GRT will be used to mint new signal in L2. And in this case, you can also just withdraw in L1 if you don't want to go through the bridging process. So that's transfer tools. It should be only those 4 cases. There are a few other cases, and this might be important for a lot of community participants that have some specific vesting contracts, and they stake and delegate from those. And don't worry, there will be ways to also do that. It will look very similar to this, just a few more steps before, so that you can ensure that you're doing it with a vesting contract on both sides. And then, so this is what we have so far. The products are getting there. We still have to do a little bit more of development and testing to get all of this supported, and to make sure that this new indexer stack works properly, and that all of the indexers are ready and prepared to support this migration and support the transfers, and make sure that the subgraphs have this seamless experience. So in the next few weeks, I'm not going to say how many, but in the next few weeks, we're going to get this to mainnets and deployed and on production, and you'll be able to go to thegraph.com/explorer or studio and transfer your stake, subgraphs, and so on. Once that happens, that's not the end of it. Obviously, we need to get to the point where 100% of rewards are on Arbitrum. So we've put forward a proposal, another graph improvement proposal. This one is JP52 if you want to go into the forums and look at it. And the idea is we need certain milestones to happen before the community is happy and saying, okay, we're going to increase rewards on L2. We're more comfortable with how the network on L2 is working, and the quality of service of the indexing, and the amount of subgraphs and so on. So to move to 25% of rewards on L2, we'll need at least 2 weeks from when we launch the transfer tools, so that we make sure that everyone can try them. We can confirm that indexers can use it, that indexers can set up their L2 operations, and that some subgraphs can move over. And from then on, there's a next step that is moving to 50%. That doesn't have a lot more conditions. It's just 2 more weeks, or at least 2 more weeks with everything working well. And then a bit of a longer process that's going to be at least 2 months, in which we need certain amount of indexers, certain amount of delegators, and certain amount of subgraphs to have moved to L2 before we do a big bump and say, okay, now 95% of rewards are going to be minted on Arbitrum. And after that, I mean, long before this, I think maybe when it's 25% L2, I would think that Arbitrum will be the preferred place to interact with the graph network. Because beyond the rewards moving up, we're already going to have a lot of activity there, a lot of indexers serving your subgraphs, and there should be no reason to deploy any new thing to mainnet just to pay more gas costs. But once we get to that 95% mark, the GIP says at least 1 month, but I think that the main thing there is we need at least, or the majority of the subgraphs that are actually sending queries on mainnet to have been transferred to L2, because the moment we do the 100% switch to L2, then there's no indexer rewards left on L1, and then most or all indexers would just go away from L1 and just do full operations on L2. So to do that last 5%, it might take a bit longer than a month. It depends on how fast the subgraph developers and consumers decide to do that transfer, but hopefully it will happen within a relatively short time frame. And then at some point, the council, the community might decide to sort of deprecate or disable the L1 network. For now, there's no concrete plan of doing that, but it shouldn't be necessary, because with no indexing rewards, everyone will be on L2 and taking advantage of the reduced gas costs. So I want to close with some notes of what else is coming. So we did all of this extended teamwork to get the network on L2, but it's not the end of it, of course, and there are a lot of other improvements, and a lot of core devs are working on, all the core devs are working on a lot of improvements to the network. So after this, or while this is happening, we also have the improved billing and payments experience. BK mentioned this earlier, the subscriptions that hopefully make it easier for everyone to pay for their queries. Improved protocol mechanisms. There are a lot of things. We have a brilliant economic research team looking at improving the mechanisms, making them more efficient, easier to understand, easier to interact with, and more beneficial for all the participants. For instance, there's a change in how indexers get their query fees paid after indexing a subgraph. That's coming really soon, called exponential rebates. Better subgraph upgrades experience. Like, we know it can be tricky to upgrade a subgraph that is deployed to the network. There's contracts there's things you're doing, signal that needs to move. We're working on improving that. And substreams powered subgraphs that are happening, they're being deployed now, I think. And I can't wait to see what happens with those on the network. And obviously a lot more change being supported. And more, and like I could be here all day. I know Sam's work with, Sam's semiotics team work with AI and different applications of AI in the graph, and very exciting stuff. So yeah, I think, well, that's what I have. Ready for drinks and food, I think. So thank you.
And that's all she wrote, folks. Bar is down the way. Let's have some more conversations. Let's talk about this, talk about more stuff. All you guys are building, guys and gals are building something cool. So I really want to make sure each of us connect and make sure we're working together to build a better future. So thanks for showing up, everybody.